All right, in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to build the Founding Fathers quote book interface that I showed you in class today. So let's start with Xcode, and let's pull it up here, and let's see, why is it not showing up on my built-in Retina display here? Sorry, let me drag this over. Okay, hopefully that's recording okay. All right, so I've got let's drag this corner out. Okay, single view app, let's start there. We're going to call this Founding Fathers Quote Book. And we'll take the defaults there, put it in my, I've already got it in the in-class examples folder. I'll just put it up in my main folder for now and then move it later. Okay, so start with the storyboard. Here's our storyboard. The first thing we're going to need is I want to put an image of a Founding Fathers scene here on my view controller. So I'm going to go drag an image view out. And I start looking through here, and somewhere I'm going to find an image view, or maybe I'll miss it. Oh, there it is, image view. You can always filter down here by typing whatever you'd like to find, and that may be a better way for you to do this. So we'll drag this to be the size we want. We'll use the little TIE Fighter icon here to say pin it to the parent boundaries on all four sides, add constraints. Okay, now next I need to actually choose an image to put in there. And to get an image in there, I'm going to go to assets.xc assets. I'm going to click on the plus down here and make myself a new image set. I'll rename the image set to Founding Fathers Square. And then I'm going to drag and drop an image. Let's see, where is my finder? Way on another screen here. Okay, so we'll go to my in-class examples. I've got this Founding Fathers Square right there. Okay, it's real easy. I just have this image that I drag and drop in there, and if I had the same image rendered at 1x and at 3x, I could drag it in, but it will auto-scale to those other dimensions. In this case, where I have a JPEG of a painting, that's probably going to be just fine. But if I really were releasing a commercial app, I might consider rendering it in JPEG at these other resolutions ahead of time. There's some things that, well, we'll worry about that later. Okay, so I've got that Founding Fathers image now, so I come to my image view, and now this drop down over here says Founding Fathers Square. And I don't want to scale to fill, I want to go to aspect fill. You can try the different options and see what they do, but this is the one that works pretty well, and it will render both landscape and portrait the way I'd like it to do. So that's what I want. Okay, now, next, I need some buttons to do some things. And so let's go get ourselves a button interface or control. There we go, drag this out. Now, a button on top of this image is going to look kind of bad, so I'm going to change the background to white and change the alpha level to maybe 0.8. We'll see how that does. And then I want three buttons. I want for setup, and then I want another one for quote of the day. Whoops. Okay. Quote of the day. And then I want a third one for browse topics. Those are the things I'm going to be able to do here in this app. Okay, now, I want these to be the same size, so we need to do a little bit of work on this. We need to place them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all three of those. I could come up to my editor window and say Embed in Stack View. I could also click on this icon down here in the lower right of Interface Builder, and they will both do the same thing, embed in a stack view. As soon as I do that, it makes a stack out of these things. And now I go, see I have my stack view and this document outline on the left. I can say, well, I'd like to have some spacing between those things. Now I could put a hard-coded number in here. I could say 5, for example, or I could say use the standard value for spacing, and then in this case it looks like it's about 8. All right, so far so good. I need to now position my stack view with auto layout constraints. So I don't know how to really control drag from the stack view over in here. You see it selected the Founding Fathers Square. Well, no, it looks like maybe it did select the stack view. to the fountain. Let's see if this works. See, it's hard for me to know. Did I really select the stack view or not when I was control dragging? But I'm going to say I would like to center this horizontally. And yeah, it does look like it selected the stack view for that. But I can also control drag from my document outline here if it's not clear to me what I'm really selecting. So if I control drag from here, and now let's say, well, I want to align to the bottom of the Founding Fathers square. And so we'll put in a bottom alignment here. Now, these little warnings, and so the yellow-orange lines here and these numbers, this is telling us that there's a problem with our auto layout constraints. This little dashed box shows that at runtime, that stack view is going to move over to this location. And so it's off just a little bit. We want to do some editing here. So I'm going to select the size inspector, and I have my stack view selected. And so you see I have align center X to Founding Fathers square. That's great. But this align bottom, I don't want it aligned exactly to the bottom. I want it up from the bottom a bit. So I'm going to say minus 80 for my constant. And now you see that this dashed square goes about there. Well, now if I click on this little triangular TIE fighter and say, choose one of these things to resolve it, it can move the frames or it can update the constraints. Notice if I click on this little arrow up here as well and see what the issue is that it's complaining about, misplaced views. I also have, and this gives me a little bit more explanation as to what Interface Builder can do to resolve the problems. I have these options here. Either update the frames or the constraints or reset it to what Interface Builder would suggest. I'm going to say update the frames like it would do at runtime and see what it does here. So I click on Fix Misplacement and it moves these and my little warnings go away. Now, the only thing I don't have the way I want right now is that the button size, the width, is not what I'd like. So I'm going to select, actually let's not do it through drag. Let's select all three of these guys. And let's choose the Align menu over here. And let's say that I'd like their leading and trailing edges to be the same. So we add those 4 constraints, and now they're the same, but there's still something that I'm missing, and that is I'd really like it to be a little bit wider so that I have some margin around quote of the day. That just doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a width constraint. But now that width constraint, so right now it's set to 117. That's the natural size. So I could come in here and just type in a number, pick a number. There's a problem. And if you see this little arrow up here, the problem is that it's saying, well, a fixed width constraint could cause issues if you change the language, could cause clipping if you change the language. Like maybe in German, quote of the day translates to some long phrase. So what I'm going to do here instead, so let's go back to that constraint. Quote of the day, we have the width constraint. Instead of saying equal, I'm going to say that's a minimum, greater than or equal to 157. And now my complaint about may cause clipping goes away because that could widen, and the other buttons will choose to be equally wide. I probably, for localization, should do that to all 3 of the buttons, give them all this greater than or equal to, so that they can all float to a larger size if their text is different. Okay, so I think I have the initial view that I want. Let's get a title on here. So if I go to my view controller and say Editor Embed In Navigation Controller, now let's move that off to the side just a bit. Now I can attach a title to this. Now, as I select that thing, I'm going to come over here to my attribute inspector and type in Founding Fathers Quote Book. And I want the back button just to say back, which is often the default, but I'm going to force it here. Okay, let's run that much. Let's run it on an iPhone X. So compiling, loading. There's the simulator. Oh, it's off on another. No, there it is. Okay, coming up right in the middle of my screen. And waiting. There we go. Okay, so I click on these buttons. They're not wired up to do anything yet, but if I rotate you see that it does look reasonable in landscape as well as portrait. Okay, so let's keep on working on the UI here. Let's add in the next view, which is I want a scene in my storyboard here that will let me do the setup here. So let's go to the top, let's drag out a new view controller, and let's associate this through a segue by control dragging from setup to this new scene. We do a show, which is typically what you're going to want to do. And you see I got a title bar here with a back button on it. And if I go to my view controller and set its title, I want this title to say Settings. Okay, and then the settings I want to switch to say, do you want to, are you going to notify me of the quote of the day? I need a picker view to show me to choose what time of the day to be notified. And then I want a button leading to another scene that's going to let me select what days of the week to be notified. A lot going on there, but let's start with a switch. So let's go get a switch. And let's offset it from the top just a bit there. And let's get a label. Left align, and I want the label to say, notify me of the quote of the day. Okay, and so let's do our auto layout constraints. So let's see. We want trailing space to safe area, top space to safe area. That's the iOS terminology for the margins that you can use. Because now that you have iPhone 8, or iPhone 10, sorry. It's taking a minute here to respond. Now that you have iPhone 10, the layout here is a little bit different. You've got this safe area inside. The screen goes farther than you typically want to address as a normal app. And so they've defined it as a safe area that you can paint inside of. Now notice again, this is saying, hey, at runtime, this is going to be offset from where it is now. And if I just go over here and say on this little triangle, please update the frames, fix the misplacement, then it does adjust it to where the constraints say to put it. And now I want to do my realignment here so that I can now say, all right, let's do leading space to safe area. And for the vertical position, let's align vertically with the switch. And then there's one more thing here. It wants to know, in case we localize this, are you okay with me stretching the text? And so I'm going to do a trailing space, let's see, a horizontal spacing, sorry. But instead of fixing it at 39, I'm going to say it's going to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, and that will let it expand to whatever size or contract to whatever size it needs to be. Okay, next piece then, I'd like another label that says notification time. So when do I want to be notified? Now, it feels a little bit tight to put it right up there. Here, let's just type in notification time. Oops, and that's lowercase o. Okay, it feels a little tight there. The distance between those is about 8, so I'm going to move this down just a bit, give myself a little more distance. So vertical spacing there, and then I want leading space to safe area, and then I want trailing space to safe area. And in this case, we're going to change that again. We're going to go greater than or equal to 0 to let it stretch as much as it would like. Okay, next we need a picker view. So somewhere in here is a picker view. That's that rotating dial. And there's a date picker, but I want a time picker, but they don't have that built in. I'll have to program this up, but for now we'll just drag one in. And yeah, I think I'll just make it the full width here. So TIE Fighter to work here. Let's go those 3 sides, and then for the bottom, so if I check this box here, the height, it'll size it to the 162 that it naturally has chosen here. So let me add those 4 constraints. And then, let's see, so we also want our button that's going to take us to the choose what days of the week you want to be notified on. So let's drag a button out, and the text by default will be notify me daily, but if they click the button, then we'll want to go to another view controller that will let us pick what days of the week to be notified. So let's again set our constraints. So leading space to safe area, vertical spacing to the picker view, and then I want trailing space to safe area. And now let me show you another way to get to that constraint. So on the size inspector, there's that trailing to safe area, and I can click edit here, and I can say greater than or equal to 0. And that's the same as selecting that bar over there and then editing in this view over here in the size inspector. Or sorry, in the attributes inspector. Okay, so I've got that much. Now let's get the next view controller. This time I want a table view controller. So drag out a table view controller. And let's hide that little area, give myself a little more room to work with here. Okay, now control drag from the button to this new table view controller and do the show segue. So now I get my next view controller in line here, and for its title, we're going to make the title of that view controller be Notify on Days. And now, right now my table view, let's see, my table view is set to be dynamic prototypes, which means we would code that up in Swift at runtime in the view controller for this guy. But I want to do this UI statically. So I'm going to change it from dynamic prototypes to static cells. And then I can go to this section here that has 3 cells. Let's reduce it down to 1 for now. We'll change that in just a minute. And then we'll go to the cell, and in the attributes inspector we will say I'd like the style of that cell to be a basic style, which gives me a title, and I want to go and change that title to Sunday. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to say, look, give me a checkmark accessory. And we're going to toggle that checkmark on and off as they click on these different cells in the table view. Now, having that configured, I go back to my section, and let's change this to 7. Okay, and now we can go edit the text to say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. All right, and does that much work? So compile and load. Go to setup. We have nice animation in there. Now there's nothing in the picker view yet. I've got to program that. Notify me daily does take me to this. And I also have to program responding to clicks on the table view and toggling the check mark on and off. But anyway, it does. I've got the main UI going here. Okay, that's enough for this video. In the next video, I'll show you the browse topics and quote of the day.